Hello, spooky friends. This is Kitty. I love it when commenters point me to a new show, which is what Hate You All 66 did when they mentioned G vs. E. We'll be discussing decades-old media, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. The late 90s is a graveyard of good shows canceled early, never released on physical media, and forgotten down an oubliette of indifference. G vs. E, aka Good vs. Evil, stars Clayton Rohner and Richard Brooks as agents of the Corps, the side of good, fighting the Morlocks, demons out to make deals and take souls. While the show isn't set in the 70s, it goes for a 70s vibe, and it's effective enough that it seems weird when someone pulls out a cell phone. Think of the Mod Squad, produced by the love child of Quentin Tarantino and Mel Brooks. It's fast, it's edgy, it's silly. The opening credits are especially great once they get done explaining the entire premise of the show. I know, back in the 20th century, you had to explain everything to the casual viewer so they wouldn't get lost. The opening of this video is how I would have put together the credits, with just the good bits. The show was created by the Pate brothers, Jonas and Joshua, whose current project is Netflix's The Outer Banks. They wrote and or directed about half the show's 22 episodes. Josh even has cameos in 2. He's the security guard in Evil-Later and the mailroom guy in To Be or Not to Be Evil. Now, the show isn't perfect. The writing can feel sloppy, continuity is barely a thing, and there are some very problematic moments. So why am I watching this? Well, I wasn't. I kept going back and forth about what I wanted to cover for this video. I'd watch an episode and say, nah, I ain't having that. But then I'd go back. And finally, I just gave in and kept watching. My indecisiveness cost me, though, because I've only been able to watch half the episodes. What brought me back over and over were a few things. First, the lead actors are good and the characters are likable. Second, there were laugh-out-loud funny bits. Also, it was clear that everyone was having a great time doing this. But the real draw was the amazing slate of guest stars. I am a sucker for a good cameo, and it was like a treasure hunt waiting for the next one to be revealed. Part of that was the conceit that famous people would naturally be Morlocks hiding in plain sight.
Who are these guys?
Most wanted list, top 10 Morlock baddies.
Wow. Don King, Orrin Hatch, Leanne Ronswell. That's good. Gavin MacLeod, you're telling me that the captain of Love Boat is a Morlock?
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
Part of it was just fun casting. For example, Pedro Pascal, Doug Jones, Fred Willard, Teresa Russell, Lou Ferrigno, half the cast of Star Trek Enterprise, Garrett Morris, Emmanuel Lewis, Charlene Tilton, Aaron Moran, Don Wells, and some chick from The Love Boat, Antonio Fargas, John Polito, Mankind, Joseph Campanella, and Nichelle Nichols. And I'm sure I'm missing some. Despite plotting problems, the dialogue sparkles. One line that will stick with me is Joseph Campanella telling his underling,
"Don't be such an invertebrate boy."
G vs. E premiered on the USA Network in the summer of 1999, and later moved to Sci-Fi, which was as notorious as Fox for canceling stuff. Sci-Fi changed the name of the show to Good vs. Evil, which sucked the fun out of it. The main characters are Chandler Smythe, played by Clayton Rohner, a man murdered on his 35th birthday and recruited to the Corps because apparently he was ready for neither heaven nor hell. Chandler worries about the son he left behind, but he'd also eventually like to see his deceased wife, so he signs on. Richard Brooks plays Henry McNeil, a straight-A student murdered by a friend gone bad in the 70s. He's the senior partner assigned to look after Chandler, and he never let go of the 70s. Fair enough, neither did I. He also played one of the escapees from Hell and Brimstone in the episode Slayer. Marshall Bell and Googie Grass are the immediate supervisors, and a lot of fun in their own right.
Uh-oh, what's that?
Sorry about this, Sammy, but you'll leave us no choice.
What are you gonna do?
Oh, I don't know. What could it be? That's a real good question. Who's this? That your little dolly? Oh, yeah. Well, watch what he's gonna do.
Janet, you, Janet!
Yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
The head of the Corps is Deacon Jones. He's not playing anyone. He's Deacon Jones, Football Hall of Famer, the Secretary of Defense. He lays down the law for new recruits.
No sex. None. If you go there, I'm gonna kill you. If I catch you making contact with those from your former life, I'm gonna bust your head wide open.
Always stick around at the end of an episode. Sometimes you get to see Jones demonstrating Morlock killing tips on the show's second assistant director, Otto Penzato. I think they just chose the tiniest guy on set. I'd say, poor Otto, but he seems to be having fun. The premiere dumps Chandler in the deep end, trying to free a man wrongly convicted for killing a cop. Our Eastern European convict is played by Dominic Keating of Star Trek Enterprise. Keating comes back in Immigrant Evil to play an entirely different guy with an accent. The problem with shooting this particular cop is he was a Morlock. And you can't just shoot those guys. They have to be killed with a fancy split-edged blade soaked in the blood of an innocent, which seems sketchy. So they track down the still-alive cop, make him not alive, and free the guy. Of course, there are a few bumps in the road. The path for Smythe and McNeil is never smooth. Sometimes, like life, things are just never explained. In Choose Your Own Evil, an episode that was a clear homage to Run Lola Run, Chandler gets several chances to save his son from being crushed to death in a wrecking yard. We're told never to expect interference from on high, so what's going on here? Divine benevolence? Who knows? You just have to sit back and enjoy the ride. Canon is introduced from time to time, often things you think should have been mentioned earlier, like the 4 amulets of the apocalypse. Whenever Marshall Page is writing an episode, we seem to get a new chunk. Like the episode where the Morlocks are working on a drug so they aren't visible in mirrors. Wait, Morlocks are visible in mirrors? Did I miss something? To be fair, I totally could have missed something. But the way this series runs headlong in random directions, I probably didn't. It's a show you can't analyze, which is tough for me. You just have to go with it. One reviewer said they made the show as if they didn't care if they got canceled or not. I don't know if that's precisely true, but it does look like they just did whatever they thought would be fun, provided they didn't exceed their budget of approximately $10 per show. The show was shot on 16mm rather than 35, adding to that gritty, dark look. It was shot mostly on location, though they do play with green screens, like fake walking in front of an airport backdrop in Airplane. Bit of trivia, there's a scene in Airplane where Chandler talks to his wife. That wasn't the original idea. Originally, Chandler talks to the Angel of Death, who is actually in the credits even though the scene was cut. Chandler mentioned how hard Death's job must be. Death breaks down and Chandler counsels her. In return, well, that would be an unnecessary spoiler. But I wish they'd kept it in because it makes a lot more sense. Like Star Trek, the original series, the pilot we see is not the one that was first filmed. Smythe's initial partner was Virgil, played by Cress Williams. When Williams decided not to return to the show, they used bits of the pilot as a flashback in the episode Underworld. Underworld was the 13th episode, but for some reason, every transfer has it as the final one. I think it's the only one out of order, but I could be wrong. You can tell it's out of order because it has the old opening, G versus E, instead of Good versus Evil. You can also tell because if it's really the last episode, there is a serious continuity problem, as Henry talks about going back to take care of the guy who murdered him, something that already happened in the episode that is now shown in the 13th spot, Renunciation. So if you watch this, chuck Underworld in before Renunciation and it will make more sense. Otherwise, it's like a polar bear running around in an igloo shouting radar, which is a reference to Cougar Pines, an episode that was not about what I thought it would be about. I figured Cougar Pines had to be a country club filled with hot 50-something women chasing the boys around the pool house. Nope, it was about golf. It's a sly shot at Tiger Woods, where a Morlock signs the father of a young golfer who hopes to make his son a prodigy. The Morlock agent and his assistant are played by John Billingsley and Jolene Blaylock, rounding out our Star Trek Enterprise trio. In Cougar Pines, Henry gets to beat up a bigot, and we discover the one thing that makes golf easier: alcohol. In the actual last episode, Portrait of Evil, we've got a little, a big, nod to Rear Window, as Chandler is injured and has nothing to do but spy on neighbors, and Henry is being tested to see if he's ready for ascension. The ending is satisfying in the same way as a good movie being set up for a sequel. It was a fitting finale, but left the door open for more. I'm pretty sure all the uploads on YouTube come from the same source. The quality is pretty bad at first, with episodes 2 and 3 being actually wavy, but it gets somewhat better later. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can buy a download, and this is the same transfer, from Hard to Find TV that is only a tiny bit better. I currently have master tapes for 2 episodes in the mail, and will upload them to my other channel, OAS Movies, when they arrive. So if you'd like to see them, hop on over there and subscribe. I'll also update the description here when they're uploaded. If you're one of those mega fans that got master tapes during the auction in September of 2000, I hope you'll consider uploading them. Special thanks to Hate You All 66, who told me about the show, and to Scott's G vs. E Info Center from the Wayback Machine. I cannot express my disappointment that the fan art link was not saved. And thank you, spooky friends. I love you to death. Good night.